Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. It's been a while since we've done one of these. One of these massive beer editorials that I used to do quite a bit back in the day when I had a bit more time. But, you know, sometimes you get to hankering, and we return to these. And it's basically just me, an editorial of me just kind of riffing on something. And today's subject, probably no surprise, it's going to be about Anchor. Not necessarily about Anchor Brewing, but more specifically about the beer world and where it sits right now and how things are, because it's a really, really, really weird world right now when it comes to beer. So for those that don't know, Anchor Steam Brewing out of San Francisco announced that they were closing. Basically, they were shutting their doors. They first announced that they were pulling back their distribution and only making beer and releasing it in California, and then a month or so goes by, and then they say, you know what, we're calling it quits. And by Anchor, I mean Sapporo, because Sapporo is their parent company who owns them. Backtrack several years, Sapporo, during the kind of big beer kind of buying portion of the show, when Big Beer was buying a bunch of crap breweries, they decided to purchase Anchor. It's not their first big brewery. They own Maudit and several other breweries, but they bought Anchor for what I believe is $85 million. Paltry compared to some, Ballast Points of the world and Gooses of the world, but they were bought out. And a lot of people kind of took that as, kind of like a sad little story about like, oh, that's sad, Anchor's selling or whatever. It is sad. When seminal kind of important breweries kind of go to the way of the dodo, or at least the macro beer kind of dodo. They were bought, but then, they kept chugging along. They were making beer, and then, some genius at Sapporo decided, well, we're going to rebrand to this, which is just basically a big Anchor. If you remember the old Anchor labels, they're very, very classic, very, very old school. I get the reason why they did this whole rebrand, trying to become a little bit more kind of hip, a little bit more up to date, try to drive sales and prices. They go from doing, their Liberty Ale, the Steam Ale, Porter, things like that, started dipping their toes in the water, doing the hazy stuff. And along that way, they unionized, or at least the people at the brewery unionized. They were working in shitty conditions and getting paid bupkis. So they unionized, and they got everything ratified, went through, and they signed a 3-year contract. So that would have been 2020, because that contract was up, and it was going to be renewed this year in January. Never happened, but I would imagine a bunch of back and forth went around, and lo and behold, they decided, oh, we're just going to scale back production and only produce beer in California. A couple weeks later, they're like, screw it, we're out of here. We're going to sell the brewery. And liquidate the brewery is the way they put it. The people that be at Anchor or Sapporo. And at first it was like, the first news of them pulling back was really, really weird, because they're like, you have so much production. Like, I get pulling back because it's a smart move, way too late for them. Probably the opposite direction they should have went in, rather than selling to Sapporo, but at this point Sapporo owns them and they need to regain profit. And they back up, and then they just say, that's it, we're liquidating. And to me, in combination with the way their unionization efforts kind of went, it kind of just sounds like Sapporo's trying to cut their losses. By cut their losses, I mean at least break even, because I'm sure they've generated a profit at some point during the whole Anchor thing, you would imagine. Most of these bigger craft or macro organizations don't really buy craft breweries for hyper profit. They're just trying to dip their toe into distribution and production and have their kind of portfolio diversified and all that kind of things. But with Anchor, it's a very, very unique position, because the rumblings and what I've heard and what I've read for a couple different reasons, one of the big reasons that Sapporo is kind of cutting and running is a combination of, one, unionization costs drove up the pricing. The brewery and the beers themselves were very much on life support as far as sales go. Like, I already know how old this beer is. spoiler, it's very old. I picked up this. I said, and I did this as a test. So I was out, and I'm like, I'm going to make this video. I want to drink an Anchor beer while I'm doing this video. I'm going to pick up the first Anchor beer that I see. I'm not going to look at what it is. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to take it home. I'm definitely not, look how old it is. Because I'm assuming it's going to be kind of old. And this just came in a 6-pack. Cardboard with no dates on it, so I couldn't even cheat. Because I kind of tried to cheat a little bit. I was like, oh, before I started the video. But I cracked it open, and I looked. Wow, I'm throwing stuff at you guys now. This is packaged in December of 2021. And that was kind of my point, is that all this stuff happens. And what happens in the beer world? Everybody starts getting very, very nostalgic, very, very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Thoughts and prayersy. Yeah, I'm not religious, but you know when something bad happens, the people that don't really want to usher change just say, oh, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. It's kind of how it was with everybody, and it started to really piss me off because I don't know anybody who's buying Anchor beers, minus little drips and drabs here. Listen, I'm one of them. I don't buy a ton of it. Porter's my jam. Like, I would buy porter at least once every couple months. You know, something about that beer just does it for me. You know, obviously every year around Christmas time, I would dip my toes into the Christmas beer, special ale waters, yada, yada, yada. Outside of that, I cannot tell you that any of their new school products I had. Steam beer I haven't had. I've had Old Foghorn a couple times, but they were sent to me of aged varieties from other people. And I fancy myself a lover of classics, a lover of old school beer. A person who will buy the old jams just to rip on and chug on them. If I'm not buying them, who is? I don't know anybody who buys them. I don't know anybody who does. And that's why they're obviously shuttering. No one's buying their beer. If they're massively profitable, if they're even decently profitable, Sapporo wouldn't be cutting the plug and running. They would just be like, okay, we're doing really well, but nobody buys their beer. You go in an old school beer bar that's like really hangs their hat on having diversity, you'll find Steam on tap. You know, you go to maybe an airport in San Francisco, you find Steam on tap. I'm sure San Francisco very well represented, but I'm saying outside of that because they're a national company. You know, they're distributing nationally. Pretty much, I don't know if they're in every single state, but I would imagine they're, if not all, they're very close into all of them. I can't tell you if I've ever seen it on draft, out and about. I don't think I've ever ordered on draft. And that's me, someone that I think pays attention to stuff a little bit more than casual beer drinker. And then it's just, you know, like I said, there's this outpouring of like, how could this happen? We need to save Anchor. Well, buy their motherfucking beer. Like, that's the thing. You can't. I guess you can wax nostalgic and get very, very kind of like, that's sad that happened, but you can't be like, we can't let this happen. But at the same time, never buy their stuff. Never buy it. No, if you're telling me you're buying Anchor Steam on a reg, I want you to prove it for one. Two, you're probably a liar. And honestly, if you are, you're very, very small percentage. And as a national company that needs to create a certain amount of money just to exist, it's like you can't even get mad at Sapporo. Like, you get mad at yourself if you're really, really that broken up. Let me crack this open because I want to drink this 2.5-year-old beer. Oh, it's gonna gush because I threw it around like a dum-dum. Man, that, I think that would have been like that. No, that's not for me dropping it. That's just how this beer is. Anyway, but it's one of those things where come on, paper towels. It's the whole, you know, thoughts and prayers, woe is me, save Anchor. I just find it to be very, very, very disingenuous. You know, from a lot of beer drinkers, because I think they're just, you know, they're just glomming on to something that they feel should be better, should be done more correctly, but won't actually put in the time or effort to do it. You know, and like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not sad that a historical brewery went away. I do enjoy their beers, but as far as just in today's beer world, do they resonate? And that's the crux, the cusp of the conversation is that, you know, two things, three things happened with the downfall of Anchor. One, they sold to Sapporo, and Sapporo probably tried to turn them into Sierra Nevada. Tried to turn them into, a one of those founders kind of things. Old school brewery, spinning, pivoting, do a bit of new school. Try to do a rebranding. That's just not what Anchor was ever going to be, I don't think. And I think it was just miscalculation of Sapparo's fault, or Sapparo's side of things. Two, they never really evolved with the industry. Sure, they tried to do some hazies. They tried to do a little IPA here and there, but it always felt like an aside, like a half-hearted effort. And just be like, we'll make an IPA, call it a hazy, we'll put it in cans with our new design, hopefully it takes off. Like, that's the amount of effort, from my perspective, that they put into it. And then the third one is the beer drinker, like, and that's honestly the most, like, for everybody gonna get, like, being all sad about it, it's also very honest. To be honest with you, like, they're sad. That's the dishonest part, because they're sad because something that they're supposed to be sad about is going away, more than actually being sad about it. But two, they didn't buy the beer because it wasn't for them. It wasn't what they wanted to drink, and by them, it's a new school beer drinker. Listen, it's not a newsflash. Almost all beer drinkers nowadays are new school beer drinkers. By new school, I mean only a couple, several years old. They just don't have they just don't have, and this sounds super pretentious, but I say they don't have the appreciation for old school beer. All they know is new. It's kind of like when I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. I listened to The Ringer, Bill Simmons, Watchables. They were talking about him trying, his kids trying to, sitting down and be like, let's watch some Cheers, And he's like, my kids got 4 minutes in there, and they're like, this is too slow, the clothes are too old, it's grainy, I don't want to watch this. I can get that. I can appreciate that, actually. I can feel that way. I went to trivia night tonight with my mother-in-law and my wife and Micah. And, they're like, movies coming up, and they're like, okay, here we go, Matt, this is your category. I'm like, the first one's like in 1970, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, and movies before Star Wars don't exist to me. Because I just can't get down with it when it's old and it's overacted and it's black and white. Sue me. I just can't get into it. And that's why I can kind of connect there and kind of see how a lot of new school kind of drinkers might view, this brewery as that. As in, like, I don't have time for that, You have to be able to at least evolve in some form or fashion. That doesn't suck for being two and a half years old. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's actually not bad. Testament to a good brewery. But it's like, it's one of the things where you have to at least do something to try to exist, to try to evolve, and be there. Because I think, if Anchor kept their portfolio at bay, or kept their portfolio pivoted towards some stuff that people were into, I'll say it, the baby palates of all the people that are drinking nowadays, I think eventually you do evolve to the point where you appreciate this kind of beer. You might not like, a lot of people, this is what they got it into beer-wise, so they appreciate it from the get. A lot of people don't. But I think you eventually pivot. Once you've run through the gamut of all the beers, you kind of find what you like, and I think a lot of beer drinkers end up liking drinking beer as opposed to impact showy beers. And that's a lot of what Anchor does. So if they were to make it through this, and we'll get to that, they're going to exist outside of this. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. I think a lot of people that drink, the steam beers of the world, the pours of the world, I think a lot of people will gravitate towards those, or going to gravitate towards those beers. You see it already. All these craft breweries making lagers. Some are starting to get really heavily into like non-adjunct porters. I think they would have eventually came around, and it would have been a very kind of decently profitable company. But they just didn't do enough in the meantime to trudge and keep their head above water. Now, the other part of that, too, is you can't get too sad and too upset over it because they already sold. It's not like, Fritz Maytag was it's shutting down the brewery. You know what I mean? Like, they sold. They sold to Sapporo. They sold their souls, for the lack of a better term, that's what they did. They sold it. Here, this is now yours to do with as you please. It's sad it's going to go, but it's like, if Goose, went under, if, a lot of these breweries have been bought, Ballast Point, also, they go under, like, are people, like, I understand there's a little bit more history with Anchor, but it's like, it's not them anymore. It's somebody else. And even though the beers are still tasty and its original recipes, and maybe some of the people that were there at the brewery for a very long time were still there, it's one of the, even though I think a lot of jumped ship even before they unionized, it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of like, you can't get too teary-eyed over it because they already said this is, here it is. You'd be like, you're destroying our legacy. No, we're destroying our legacy. We bought your legacy. We bought the legacy. We bought it. We purchased it from you. You have nothing to do with it anymore. Now you can go back and buy it back, which could certainly be a thing that happens because I'm pretty sure you're going to get it for pennies on a dollar at this point. But it's one of those things where, too, it's like, you can't really get all that tied up in the perceived emotional portion of the show, I guess you would say. It's sad that it happened. It's sad the progression had happened. It's been happening for years now. It's like, it's not, the Anchor we all know and love from years ago just up and died out of nowhere. And like I said earlier, I almost guarantee you that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because it's weird. It's weird for a even though I would say it's a, I don't want to say dying, but it's a very much damaged brand because nobody drinks it. Like I said, this 6-pack's sitting on the shelf for 2.5 years. Almost nobody drinks it. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be absolutes. Nobody drinks it, and I lost my train of thought. It's one of those things where it's so far gone that I don't think there's a way back. And for a brewery that has such a large cachet, that's where I was going, even though it's a damaged brand, it still has a large cachet, it still has a big name, to just up and shutter the brewery for no reason whatsoever is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And that's where I kind of dug into the thing that I alluded earlier, which is, what is the brewery worth? What is the value of the brewery? And honestly, the value of the brewery is in its property, where it actually sits, in the location, in San Francisco. I looked up a couple different valuations online, and that's not research, people. Looking stuff online is research, just kind of getting a little bit of information that could and might be true. The brewery sold for $85 million. The property alone, not the brewery, not the name, not the trademark, none of that. Just the land that it's on in the building is worth, give or take, about $85 million. So, Sapporo's being like, okay, we're just going to fold it, we're going to liquidate. To me, that's more like, okay, we want to separate everything. Because you don't want to sell the brewery as a whole. If you sell it as a whole, you're losing that $85 million. No one's going to, I don't think anybody's going to buy it. I think, just like, if you wreck your car, if you have a really nice car, if like for example, I don't have an amazing car. I have a GTI, and that's a little bit of a coveted car. A lot of people wreck them. Why? Because they go fast. And when people wreck them, the smartest thing you possibly do is part it out. Part it out. Let's do it. You could sell a wreck, and you get a couple $1,000s for it, maybe, depending on how damaged it is. But if you start parting out the hood, parting out the non-damaged, parting out the seats, parting out the, you'd be surprised how much money you can make. And that's kind of where I think Sapporo's head is at here. Because what they could do is they could just basically piecemeal the brewery off. Sell the brewery equipment, sell the buildings, sell what portion of the buildings you want to sell off, you know what I mean, whatever, and just brass tacks it at the end and be like, real estate. That real estate alone, $85 million. You're washed. You're even Stevens. So anything you make beyond that is pure profit. And then there's the brewery portion of the show. Not the brewery, that name, the Anchor brewery. I'd imagine some brewery will purchase it. How much is it going to go for? I don't think all that much, to be perfectly honest with you. But you could see somebody. You already hear whispers of it. You already kind of feel, like the Sierra Nevadas of the world. Somebody like that, or even like you could see some. I saw someone make a joke like other halves is going to buy it in open location or not, But it's somebody of that ilk, the Sierra Nevadas of the world, the Firestone Walkers of the world, like somebody along their own develop, purchasing that beer to just because I could see somebody taking it and spinning it in a way, producing it in a much more, I don't know, efficient or someone who has the logistics of doing old school beer in their brain, but in a new school world, and marketing it and doing it in a way that kind of works. So, if I were going to bet anything, the brewery is not going anywhere as far as the image and the beer. But it's going to be an interesting process to see where they go with it, because it is just such a weird combination of what is it worth, how are they going to work it, and stuff like that. Like I said, Sapporo, man, that's some thunder right there. Like, I think they're again, smarter people than me. Lawyers know about all that stuff. The guts of me feels like they're doing this folding and piecemealing and liquidation is the best way for them to maximize profit, for them to not just make back their money, but profit off this, while at the same time, they can just sell the brewery and not give a shit about it. Again, when I say brewery, I mean not the physical property, but the actual name, the beers, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to go see where they go with that. And like I said, I just, these videos when I make these, and I made one in a very long time, it's just a cool way to have a conversation about these things. And that's the whole point, is kind of just pique the imagination into, like, what do you think? I'm really curious, because I know a lot of old school beer drinkers watch my channel. I do a lot of new school beer, but more often than not, specifically lately, when I've been doing the classic beers, those are the ones that really get people's kind of juices going and kind of talk about stuff and your history and what do you feel about it. Like, what was your history with Anchor? Did you buy their beers? Be perfectly honest. This is what I want you to do. I want you to be like, yeah, I bought Steam all the time and blah blah. Be like, I'm with you. I bought it once, twice a year, and that's not going to keep a brewery open. Or, have you been to the brewery? Do you live in San Francisco? Is it one of those things that's always exists in your life? Are you some kind of weird lawyer person that for some reason watches my channels and knows the inner workings of how these things work when it comes to liquidating a brewery that sits on the absolute fucking gold mine of land? And am I on the right track with my assumptions? I'm not creating these out of thin air. These are thoughts that I thought, and I saw that other people were making the same thoughts, so it's not a unique position. But I'm curious. Have you, on the opposite end of the spectrum, have you had little to no exposure or care about Anchor? With beer being so, it's like the news cycle. It's a 24 hours news cycle now. It's like so hard to keep your product and image and top of mind. Have you totally just ignored it and not existed in Anchor's world in any way whatsoever? Are you a haze person? Are you an adjunct person to be like, I heard of the brewery, but it's never really had anything? Those are the conversations I want to have. So I'm curious to see where everybody sits and what their thoughts and prayers are about the situation when it comes to Anchor. So, it comes off a little bit cold, maybe, the way I'm kind of presenting this. It's not, I dig Anchor. Like I said, their porter is my jam. I'm going to be super, super bummed about that to a certain extent. Like I said, I assume it's going to come back. But even, let's say it takes 3 years to come back, chances are porter is going to sit in the shelves for 3 years, so I'm going to be able to get it. And it's sad for breweries to kind of go down this road. It's not all that uncommon. There's another editorial to be had from this that I want to do separately, which is about breweries closing in general. I've seen a large amount of breweries close, more specifically close to me, not necessarily in New Jersey, but Pennsylvania is rife with closing breweries. I know certain areas are worse than others, but there seems to be an absolute apex point has been reached for brewery saturation, or at least what they want to be. So that's another conversation to be had, and that's kind of like we'll riff on some of this and that, and what I believe to be now a 3-tier system when it comes to craft. It used to be craft versus macro. Now I think it's craft and craft and craft versus each other in macro to a certain extent. Basically, small breweries versus mid-level, treehouse kind of, those kind of breweries, like Equilibrium kind of stuff. Then you have that Sierra Nevada. You know what I mean? Those breweries up in that realm. We'll do a video on that and kind of see if there's any kind of correlation or kind of makes sense, but for another video. Anyway, so let me know what you think. You gonna miss Anchor? Could you care less? Did you used to drink them and not drink them anymore? Are you going to miss their beers? If so, which one? Have you been to the brewery? Are you from San Fran? Anything pertinent. So I'll put it down there. Let's have that conversation. So there you go. Little editorial in the books. Not super duper long. 25 minutes. It's good enough time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it sparked a little bit of interest in a story that you may or may not be following. And hopefully it sparks enough imagination at your fingertips. You write down there and we'll talk about it. Don't know how to end this. Cheers.